Hello and welcome back to this course on creating a 2D character for Unity. So in the last lesson, I really just gave you an introduction as to how this character was prepared in Photoshop and what we would need to do to get her into other programs. So our next stage of the pipeline is going to be Spriter, and I need to take her from this posed layout that I've got here into a more rigid uh, file structure that I can use for other programs. And I need to take all these body parts, which you can see here, and separate them all out into individual files and bring those into our animation software Spriter. So first things first, though, this character is 1200 pixels wide, 1200 pixels high. And I don't need her to be that size. As you can see, like, this is pretty big on screen for a character in a 2D game that doesn't leave much room for anything else to happen around her. And she's viewed here at 34%. So at 100%, she actually looks like that. So that's even bigger than I need. And as you can see, I'm going for this this comic line art look. So, not pixel art, not painted, not 3D looking. This is a very particular look that I'm going for, and I'm doing it because I can have these kind of crisp images. So if I go to fit on screen, at 34%, just looking at this figure as we see it appearing on screen here at this size, it looks fine. So I'm going to reduce the image to be actually this size. So it's 1200 pixels by 1200 pixels. It's roughly a third. I'm going to bring it down to 400 by 400. So I'm going to go to image and image size and set this to be 400 by 400 here. And worth checking as well, particularly on your very noisy areas or your very clear areas, that your resample settings here, this is a kind of an anti-aliasing setting, is suitable for the particular look that you're going for. So if, for instance, I use bicubic smoother, my hair here gets a little bit grayer and duller. It anti-aliases a little too much. So I'm going to use this preserve details for enlargement. Even though I've reduced it, this actually looks better. So the enlargement rather than the reduction. So I'm going to leave that. And at 100%, it looks pretty much the same as it did. Okay, so next step then, I want to break this up so that I can work on each of the individual sprites that I'm going to use in the Spriter program. So we've already got our character here on layers. She's already been drawn in a pose, which is a kind of a nice little luxury of working in 2D and within Photoshop. But that pose is no good to us if we want to start working in Spriter. You actually can take a character that's layered like this and work with it in Spriter, but it wouldn't be best practice. So let's get rid of what we don't need first. So I don't need that background, and I don't need this original sketch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start separating all of these pieces out. So I'm going to get my move tool up here and turn on auto select and start just grabbing these layers and moving them out. Now, as you can see, I've got this this character is now being kind of laid out on a gridded sheet. This isn't what I'm going to export. This is just so that I can see what I'm working with. Just so that I can grab each layer. What I need to do next is to orient each of these to face from left to right. Most of them are somewhat vertical, like the head, the backpack, the rib cage, the pelvis, and the legs are somewhat vertical. So I actually want everything to go from left to right. So I want to rotate every one of these graphics so that it's as horizontal as it can be. And I'm going to turn on show transform controls here on each layer, and I'm going to start rotating them. And I can press the tick up here. I'll just press enter on my keyboard though. So with each of these, I'm just clicking on it, rotating it, and pressing enter. For anything that matches, like these two hips, even though they're slightly different from each other, I want to make sure that they're both facing pretty much the same way. And same for these legs here. So one of the things that one of the reasons I think you need to do this, it's a recommendation by Spriter. I'm not sure if it's something that occurs in every one of these programs, but it's that each bone is oriented along the x-axis. If you've used something like 3ds Max or Maya for animation, anything that uses bones to deform a character, you may have noticed that if you inspect a bone in its local axis mode or its local reference coordinate system, that it will face locally from parent to child, right? So from one joint to the next, say the knee to the ankle, along the x-axis. And normally, the forward local axis of anything in a 3D program is the z-axis. But with bones, it's different, and it's to do with the mathematics required to calculate things like inverse kinematics and to get bones to face each other. So in practice, when we get to Spriter, what that means for us is that if our bones are not oriented along the x-axis, we'll be scaling them according to a different axis or a different reference coordinate system. So intending to compress something vertically, it might scale horizontally in a weird way. We don't want that. Now, as you can see, some of these are overlapping. That actually doesn't really matter for what I'm doing here. You can see actually as well that the bounding box for this has a stray pixel up here somewhere. So I'm just going to click here and select this area and press delete. Hopefully that's got it. And that's trimmed it in a little bit more. I'm going to undo that, actually hold down Shift. Same for everything else here. And the reason I'm not too concerned with the overlapping is that I actually will be exporting these as individual files. So overlapping doesn't matter. It's purely so that I can see what I'm working with here. So next thing I'm going to do is just go up here, File, Export, and export layers to files. And I'm going to check on visible layers only, check full character, and I'm going to put this in browse for this folder. Actually, I'm going to put it into a Spriter project. I've got a whole lot of little folders here that are already laid out. I'm going to sort each one of these files into those folders, and I'm going to export these now. So our export was successful, and I'm going to, in the next lesson, start bringing these graphics into Spriter and introducing you to how that all works. So see you in the next lesson.